FatBitz. Just a reminder that FatBitz is a podcast for women over 40. And the idea is that we turn pain into power by finding the humour in life events that take you down to Chinatown, because humour is a tonic. Today's episode is called Without Child. I wanted to cover this subject because I'm a woman without child, 49, but there are assumptions that are made about a woman who hasn't had a child, and those assumptions can be insensitive, they can be judgmental about what kind of woman you are for not having children. Historically, women without children haven't been treated very nicely. I mean, that is an understatement. If I existed in the olden days as a childless woman with oodles of intuition, I would have been absolutely done for. I would have been smoking hot, and not in a good way. History has been unkind to us ladies, but for unmarried, childless women, it was cruel AF. The name calling itself was out of order when you check it, like spinster. In at number 2, old maid. That's the Top of the Pops theme tune. You old maid. I can imagine how women were made to feel in the olden days if they didn't have kids. Gee, I'm very grateful that I was born in this time. I would have been dead. I would be finished. In at number 3. Thornback. The old thornback. Put my goggles on and I'll read you the definition of a thornback. It was a formal term for unwed women over a certain age. It is believed to reference a type of rayfish, I repeat, rayfish, with spines on its back and tail, implying unattractiveness and a stinging personality. So basically, if you didn't have a child, you was just an ugly old fish. Nice. My personal favourite was from Finland, actually. I never really felt to go to Finland, but big up Finland, big up yourself. They used to call their childless women empty baskets. It's nice, isn't it, eh? They're lovely. I can't even begin to do a Finnish accent. You're an empty basket. Doodly doodly doodly. That's not Finnish, is it? Oi! You silly empty basket. You is an empty basket. As a young woman, I thought that I would be a mum. I just thought it would happen. I guess I wanted to meet the right guy. Mr. Fantastico. Get a good job, buy a nice house with more than 2 storage cupboards, and, have that perfectly painted white picket fence outside. And then I could push him out. I came from 2 generations of women who fell pregnant at 16 and gave birth at 17, right? When I got to that age, I was like, absolutely not. I am not going through that. Because teenage pregnancy is no joke, right? I mean, you are put into very difficult circumstances at a very young age. Shout out, by the way, to my family members and friends that did have children in their teenage years and raised just the most remarkable, beautiful human beings. Shout out to them and power to you. The attitudes towards me in my 20s not having kids was, go and enjoy yourself, girl. Oh no, you don't want kids yet. As I was approaching my 30s, it was a bit like the attitude started to kind of change, intensify a little bit. It was a bit like, tick-tock, and I wasn't quite at the boo, but I was getting there. I headed into my 30s and it still hadn't happened. And that wasn't a conscious effort. It was just I didn't meet Mr. Fantastico. I had some gynae issues as well as a young woman and going into my 30s. I had horrendous endometriosis. Horrendous. That's for another episode because I can't cover endometriosis in this one. It's just all too much. I remember in my early 30s meeting a friend of a friend, actually, and she had 2 or 3 kids by that point. And when we met, she was like, "You haven't had children yet?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, "Oh, why? Why haven't you had kids yet?" And I was like, "I haven't met Mr. Right." She was like, "Oh, Mr. Right." She said, "Just get up the duff." And I, what do you want me to do? Run up Oxford Street with no drawers on, wearing a sandwich board, saying, "Free pom pom, impregnation required immediately." The reaction started to intensify as I got older and still didn't have children. Then I started getting the real head tilts. As I got into my mid to late 30s, I was getting head tilts, like 90-degree head tilt. Sheer disbelief that at like 36, 37, 38, you were saying, "I don't have kids. And I'm not in a relationship. I'm not married." And there was this incredible question which has been asked of me more than once. And I guess this is why I really wanted to do this podcast, because of this question. And the question is, what are you going to do when you get old? What am I going to do when I get old? What are you going to do when you get old? The truth is, it's never a guarantee. My mum used to work in a nursing home, right? There was plenty of people in that nursing home who had children. But I've every faith. As an old woman, I know somebody somewhere is going to wipe my batty. Somebody's got to do it. Somebody be paid to do it. There isn't anybody. If I'm some old brawny, old empty basket sitting on the roadside covered in my own excrement, I'm just going to wear a sandwich board. Emergency batty cleaning required. I remember an elder relative of mine, like we were catching up and I hadn't spoken to him in ages. I didn't really speak to him that often, but maybe once every 10 years or something, and that was quite enough. He said to me, he said, "So, he said, you're not married then?" "No." "So, you don't have a boyfriend?" "No." "And you haven't had any kids?" "No." "What are you? Lesbian?" "What are you, a lesbian?" Question mark. I was, no, just, I've got really bad endometriosis. I didn't consciously choose to not have children. And just when I thought my ship had sailed, at 39, I fell pregnant. Madness. It wasn't to be. I miscarried. That's on another episode. Again, I can't do miscarriage. That'll finish me off. After that happened, I just accepted my non-mum child-free status. And I think on that note, I'm a little bit parched. I think it's time for a tea break. Who don't love a cup of tea? I mean, I know there are some that don't. I ain't judging that. Recharged. And obviously, tea break would be nothing without a light snack. Today, I have got the classic prison biscuit. And that's what we used to call them back in the day, a prison biscuit. It's nothing to them, really, but I don't always have to have a fanciful cookie. And obviously, we've got to do the Dunky Doodah, otherwise it's not right. Do you know who else likes a prison biscuit? Any takers for a prison biscuit? Ollie, come and meet the Fat Bitz ladies. This is my fur baby. I said I didn't have children, but I really do. And he is the light of everyone's life. Are you looking at that biscuit? Shall we give Harley a prison biscuit? I think so. I think you deserve it for being so super cute. Oh, is that nice? Oh. Okay, bye. So, where was I? So I didn't want this podcast to be just about my experience as a child-free lady. I thought I would survey fellow empty baskets on how they feel about being child-free and some of the reactions that they get. Similarly to me, some of the thorny back crew felt like it was going to happen in the early stage of their life, but circumstances changed that. Well, some friends were like adamant that they didn't want kids and never envisioned it for themselves and don't regret making that decision. Now, one of my friends had an early termination. It was around 19, and that affected her fertility for the rest of her life. When she realised she had a fertility problem, she was in a marriage and she was wanting to have a child with her husband. She just couldn't fall pregnant. And back in those days, you couldn't get IVF on the NHS. So IVF was inaccessible, and it was beyond their finances to do it. See, she went through the rest of her life not having a child, but always wanting to be a mum. So imagine you've had fertility issues your entire adult life, and then she actually went on, fell pregnant, and had a miscarriage. You've gone through all that, and when you meet people and they find out you don't have a kid, their reaction is, "Why did you never have kids? Why no? Why didn't you?" I have another friend who when she was a kid, her mum had told her loads of horror stories about giving birth, and that put her off for life. That combined with the fact that she's gay as well, that didn't help her chances of having a child back then anyway. Now it's very different for gay people, thank goodness. One of my mates, she was like, well, it was expected of me. Then I just carried on using contraception until I got old. There are so many reasons why women don't have children. It's circumstantial, it's medical, it's financial. When people make the assumption that this was just a cold, hard choice, I mean, it's never like that. Obviously, for those women who just didn't want to have children, and there are men out there too who just don't want to have children, and that's cool. This aids population control. It's fine. And for those women that they didn't want to have children, there is this assumption that those women don't have maternal feeling. There's a lot of heartache for women who really want children but never had them through no fault of their own. And typically women tend to carry heartache in silence, right? When you haven't had a child, to be faced with assumptions that you never wanted children just pours a big old bucket of salt in the wound. Like, not all reactions are poorly delivered. Because there's also the assumption that wanted children, and how can I help you? One of my friends told me that she was offered surrogacy by another friend, but she didn't even ask for it. I mean, how sweet is that friend? That is a beautiful offering. People do mean well. And I guess for some, it's like, it's awkward. I came to the conclusion sort of in my late 40s that it's not going to happen. And there's the acceptance of that, which was really hard. And that feeling as a woman is devastating. So for me, personally, acceptance was everything. And navigating away from external judgments that were not aligned with me at all helped me deal with the finality of not being a mum. Whatever the case, we're really lucky as women that we live in a time where we can live full and fruitful lives without children. Fur babies are quite enough for me. Do you want a prison biscuit? I know that's why you're up here. Oh.